Peter Heath from Atkins, Design Director, work on Public Realm, and as many know, many strategic big projects, HS2, Grail and so on. I'm going to focus on the last speaker because I have clients personally in London with bids and private and public sector interests. And one of the things that the strategic economics starting point from Tony is big money and big projects. And he used repeatedly the term modest change might have a better chance of success. I think that the modest end that Dr. Julie Grail just very beautifully articulated of bid opportunities is the one that still isn't interesting enough to politicians who get very interested in big project infrastructure. But big project infrastructure, as we know, even with Crossrail, does take a very long time to pay off, longer than most politicians, Lord-Adonis, last. So that's my question is, which mayor, not next time, but which mayor for next 2 terms or 3 terms, for the continuity that the value of those politicians and their decisions make.
Great, thank you very much indeed. So I should focus on those small things that make everything better. There's a hand up right at the back. Joanne?
Hi, Joanna Overley from Land Aid. A really simple one from me. Decide who's going to make the decision. Is it central government or London government? And keep them apart. So when it comes to the airports, we've got a complete fudge because actually it should either be a London decision or a central government decision, and therefore we've got an almighty mess.
Okay, thank you. Who else? Alex?
Hi, Alex Bax, Chief Executive of Pathway, Little Homeless charity. Everybody's alluded slightly to inequality in the city, but nobody really said anything about what to do about it in big structural terms, which seems to be a long-term problem. I think Will talked about it being a fundamental problem. But we need to see some action on this. The gap between which report is staggering, and that requires some very significant change, I would say.
Okay, so the question, I suppose, is what should we really do about inequality? I think Andrew's remarks about the East Thames crossings was somehow about that as well, was it not?
So, I mean, I'm involved with a group trying to propose the notion of a fairness commission for London. In the sense that we've had an infrastructure commission, I think the problem of fairness in the city is so bad, we need a similar focus to look at and come forward with some proposals which are going to make a difference. The mansions were featured in the Sunday papers about being vacant. Bishop's Avenue largely vacant, and yet I know from the homeless sector we have very large numbers of people who are sleeping on the street.
Okay, 3 propositions so far. 1, focus on those place-making services. 2, separate decision-making on airports between central and local government. 3, let's focus more on inequality and on promoting fairness. Who else wants to come in? Fred, the floor is yours.
For just a moment. I think that really would be interesting for government to say what it is which they do well and what it is the private sector does well, because there's a deep confusion about the different way that they function. And I don't think that the idea that central government should, or local government should just simply respond to the private sector is the right way. It means a reinvention by politicians of what their role is.
Right, thank you very much. Clarity about central government versus business roles. Who else? Yep, the microphone will come to you, sir. We don't have to do this one at a time, by the way. We've got more than one mic.
Peter Drummond from BDP. This is a question, a plea, a statement, an exasperation, not sure what it is. How on earth, first I agree with practically everything, 85% plus. You said this morning.
Very good.
How on earth do we get the London boroughs to revise their core strategies, to be in tune with what's been said this morning, to focus on growth and intensification, and to be done in less than 12 months and be less than 247 pages on average?
Tony, that's going to be a question I'll ask you to comment on in a minute, if that's okay. How do we get the London boroughs on side with this agenda and to be more business-like, I guess is your point. Who else? Yes, sir?
It's 29 London boroughs, 33, well, 32.
Should London plan for being a city of 15 million this century?
Okay, should we be planning to be a city of 15 million? And let me throw in my little question. Will talked about London's growth as much of it happening outside the M25. So what's the mechanism for London and the Greater South East to work together. Doesn't currently exist as far as I can tell.
Yes, I'd just like to ask the panel what they think a Londoner is in the current and going forward. Is there such a thing as a Londoner anymore?
And is you one?
I certainly am one.
Okay, very good. Who else? Okay, that's it. So panellists, what I'd like you to do really very briefly, because we promised to have people out of here on time, give your answer on what should the next mayor or what should the next government do, one key thing, and respond to one of the points that's been made from the audience each, if you would. And Julie, we'll begin with you and we'll work back towards Tony.
Okay, I have two things from me then. I think the first one is to absolutely, the government and London must recognise that the multi-layering of this kind of levy model is absolutely false and is not going to work and is going to kill the kind of golden goose. And the codependency of that public sector investment enabling with the private sector's kind of aspirations has got to come together. Answering a question, just pick up on the Fred, I think it was. There's an interesting question actually about the democracy of local government versus the sometimes challenge to a bid about its own mandate. Anyone that works in placemaking knows that a bid is by far more democratic than a local government focused on a place ever is.
Great, thank you very much. Let's keep it nice and crisp. David?
Inequality question, basically I don't think that you can sort it without sorting out wage levels and pay at the low end of the labour market. I mean, that's what essentially is collapse. We've got to be looking at how we're pushing the London living wage, and we also need to be remembering that in terms of the welfare reform and the cuts to welfare, that is disproportionately hit Londoners on welfare, so that needs to be looked at as well. But also completely accept, and of course we're lacking the housing speaker here, but the way that the housing market is going is really driving that inequality and driving that sort of geographical chasm that we will be getting between increasingly inner London and where people on low incomes are being pushed out. I don't see that there's going to be any quick answers on this, but something, a fairness commission or something like that to actually start kicking around some more radical ideas about how we are sort of devolving greater powers, but also being able to actually affect the actual structure of our labour market and who's getting what in it. Important idea.
Great, thank you very much. Lord Adonis.
Can I just make one point on inequality, skills and growth? If there's one thing I think London needs to do, actually the whole country needs to do it, but London needs to do it too, it's a transformation in the quality and quantity of youth apprenticeships. If you do a cohort analysis, about 1 in 10 18-year-olds are in an apprenticeship, more than 3 in 10 go on to university. Now, it's great that you've got the 3.5 in 10 going directly onto university, and London's 22 universities do an outstanding job. There's also a massive export industry and all of that. That 1 in 10 figure on apprenticeships is a scandalous figure. It needs to be 2 or 3 in 10. And wearing my Labour Party hat, I'm leading an independent growth commission like Heseltine for the party, independent in the sense it will report independently. Obviously, it will feed into the party's policy making. I've now done a dozen business consultation events across the country, including in London. When you ask the question, what is the single biggest impediment to growth, every single consultation event I've done, skills comes top, and the shortage of trained technicians within that comes top. When you then ask the question, how many of you employ and train apprentices, it's always 1 or 2 in 10 of the businesses that are present, including the public sector. This business about public and private working together. The public sector is a terrible employer of under 21-year-olds and apprentices. The very worst I've come across is the Department for Business, Innovation and Skills, which is the department responsible for preaching apprenticeships to the private sector, which when I last asked a parliamentary question had 13 apprentices under the age of 21 out of a staff of 3,000, and its agencies, which are responsible for employing another 25,000, have barely any more, including big agencies like the Ordnance Survey, 3,000 employees, loads of technician jobs, no employees under the age of 21, no apprentices, the Land Registry, 5,500 employees, lots of technician level jobs there, no employees under the age of 21, no apprentices. Until the government can itself become an exemplary employer of apprentices, how can it preach this to the private sector? But there's nothing which will make a bigger difference, in my view, to equality and prosperity in London than ending this massive divide we have at the moment between those that go on the graduate treadmill and by and large do well, high incomes and all that, and those that don't, who are a large part of the London's unemployed, very low paid, and are at the roots of this two cities that David talked about.
Thank you very much indeed. Will?
Is there such a thing as a Londoner? I think there is, even though some of them may have been born anywhere else but London. And I think London represents the best of the British liberal tradition. It's actually, London was, without London, no civil war, no parliamentary democracy. Londoners were on the right side of that one. And it's openness, diversity, kind of respect for the individual and your choices, wanting to live well by reasons you have, by whatever compass it is that you want to live well. All that is kind of in the kind of DNA of London, its buildings, its culture, and is a fabulous place. And the reason why people want to come here is not actually low taxation and all that bollocks, or labour market flexibility and all that bollocks. It's because they want to be part of this party. It's a fantastic civic party where you can have a great time and they want to be part of it, part of the action. That's what pulls them here. And actually that's what we have to keep going and understand its origins. I've tried to say what I think they are. You won't repeat them. But I'm very stress this part about open innovation, stress this point about codependency, and watch the new mayor do homes and bridges.
Thank you very much, Will. I'm tempted to have a vote on whether we want openness or bollocks, but I don't think that's going to work. So, Tony, the last remarks are yours.
Okay. Well, on the question of, for all the different levels of planning, in effect, and the planning question, clearly having boroughs and the mayor and central government all with a role in planning is mad. And getting the government out of that. I mean, we need to have London. London's a place that can make its own decisions. We don't need a top level. In fact, now that's qualified by judicial review of what the Secretary of State does. So we need to get national government out of that, at least make it a two-level system. There is a legitimate local and citywide level to planning. So I think, there are issues where the boroughs need to stand up to big developments, and there are issues where the mayor needs to overwhelm that borough resistance, but both views are legitimate. To help to get the boroughs on side, the more of the tax yield they generate, they keep, the more they'll be on side for development. It wasn't that long ago they kept no yield of anything. They didn't keep any growth in the council tax base, none in the business rate base. That was not a sensible system. Let's move further towards one where they do keep at least some of the yield. That incentive will produce more activity. Inequality is something only national government can do. I'm generally talking about trying to devolve power. In the end, tax systems and benefit system in this country will remain overwhelmingly with national government. And we vote for governments that don't do anything about it. That's the truth. Successive governments don't tackle these issues. And they show up worse in London than elsewhere. But a London Fairness Commission, wonderful though it might be, and it would get some publicity, would have to change central government's policies, as determined by the median voter in, I make it up, Lincoln. So, just remember that. And then finally, I absolutely take Will's point about Londoners. It is an open concept, Londoner, and that is what its strength is. There are other cities which defend their right for you to call them whatever it is. I won't name any. But Londoner, you can affix the title to yourself the afternoon you arrive, and quite right too.
Tony, thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, we've heard, I think, a sparkling set of remarks from our panellists, all brilliant in their own fields, and I failed miserably to control the time they took, and I apologise for that, but it's been absolutely fascinating. We've heard a lot about priorities, and I won't rehearse them all, but you heard from Tony, from Andrew, from Will, from David, from Julie, very clear priorities. We heard a lot about reform, things that could be managed or done differently so that London could benefit and the nation could benefit and the peoples of London could benefit. And then we heard a lot about empowerment, things that could simply be encouraged or be allowed to get on with what they need to do. I guess in thinking about this by way of closure, the key worry at the moment is that growth will take off so much. There'll be so much talk of the excitement of jobs growing and investment growing that we'll forget about tackling these problems as the new business cycle moves forward. So we must do that. And I'm minded to add to what Tony just said, that the great thing about London, unlike many other cities, if you go to New York, you become a New Yorker. If you go to Paris, you become a Parisian. If you go to London, you become yourself. That's a Londoner. So thank you very much to GVA for sponsoring this first series of Evolving London Lectures and this wrap-up summit conversation. We look forward to the possibility of a second cycle in due course, GVA. Thank you very much to everyone for really making the effort to get here despite the transport. And please join me now in thanking our brilliant panellists. Thank you very much.